Great to meet you guys. And congratulations to you both on such an absolutely cracking movie.
Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed
Thanks,
it.
Rita. Thank you.
Um, Barnaby, this is a real throwback to the British gangster movies of the 1960s and 1970s. And I believe it's your debut film as well as a
Yeah.
director, your debut feature. Why did you pick this particular story for your debut?
You know what, you're the second person came on and said that, and it because it's like I'm really happy with what because it's like those are the kind of films that get Carters, and the Long Good Fridays and stuff like that. They were the kind of films that I kind of grew up on and everything like that. And those are things that I loved. It was like and obviously Eddie's like very channeling Bob Hoskins in this movie at all. I mean that was a discussion and that was is a meant to be. But also there's a bit of lady killers and Lavender Hill Mob in there too. There's a little eccentricity in there too, with all the characters dialed up a little bit, in eccentricity. So that's how I wanted to, I kind of loved those movies and so, but the reason why I chose this idea was like I'd been working on a couple of scripts and everything, and we're shipping them around and stuff, and we weren't kind of getting anywhere. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna, I'm gonna come up with an idea, and I'm gonna if no one takes it, I'm gonna shoot it myself, and I'll get it, I'll do it on my iPhone if so be. And so it had to be a chamber piece, and it had to be something that's so simple or simplicity in its kind of actions that we could do it like that. So, and I saw an article in a newspaper and a photo album in this newspaper of the Great Train Robbery, and in it had all the pictures of the hideout that they did it, and it was like what surprised me was like everyone thought, oh, it's going to be a hideout, it's going to be like the hideout. But it wasn't. It was a pretty cottage with like flowery wallpaper and beautiful kind of like chitsy kind of like lace and stuff like that. And I just thought, what did these guys, these hardened criminals, do for 4 days in this house? And that's what interested me, and that's what the idea sprang from, and that's what John and I worked on. And yeah, and that's where it all came from, basically.
Because actually, when you think about it, you dread to think what they got up to, and
Yeah,
this
That's
actually gives a
right.
really good idea.
yeah. Because normally
But
people do the whole train robbery, but no, I was just fascinated with that.
Yeah.
Bern, you're such a familiar face in all kinds of roles on the big screen and the small screen as well. A lot of costume dramas, a lot of horror, not so much in the way of crime, although I think you were in Layer Cake.
I was reader. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
was part of the appeal of this role the very fact that it's not something that you do very often?
Yes. Going back to the earlier question, the films that I love are those particular Ealing, Kind Hearts and Coronets, Alistair Sims, whatever. That's my bag. So when I sort of read the script and it was almost that sort of chamber piece with these eccentric characters, I wanted to be involved. But yeah, I don't know if Eddie's mentioned this, but as somebody with, shall we say, an interesting face, what I've discovered in the past is that I could do gangster movies in England till the cows come home. What's been, I suppose, a decision in my career is to look at the actual thing and say, what is the script about? Who are the characters? And are they interesting to me and to others, perhaps? And I think that it's actually something that you can fall into in England is in the past, not so much now, but sort of just exclusively do these kind of gangster films, which we're so good at. But they don't really interest me that much. And actually, it's something Eddie said as well about, essentially, you know, the criminal life or criminals and thieves. It's a terrible life. It's one of pain and moral ambiguity and who are your friends, not your friends. It's not actually a glamorous life, and then that's how a lot of our films have presented it. So anyway, yes, All I'm saying is I've been very lucky to be able to sort of maybe skirt around and find the slightly more interesting scripts. Yeah.
You're playing somebody who's quite solitary, even though this is such an ensemble piece. He does spend quite a bit of time by himself, but I'm wondering if you're a fan of Cilla Black or whether you've probably heard enough of her for a lifetime.
That's interesting because when, I am, let me put it on record, I'm a massive fan of Scylla. Let's be honest, there was a time she was one of our best exports. But yeah, so basically, when we were doing the film, obviously, we didn't know exactly what the soundtrack would be. So me and Barnaby would have discussions about, the different music that might be used and whatever. And for some of the sequences, what we did is we chose some classical. And particularly for that character coming from a sort of educated background, and obviously was a music, obsessive or brought his sound system around with him. That's what we used for particularly the more balletic kind of scenes, was something of a more classical element. And I found that very helpful. So then to see, the finished soundtrack, actually, I'm a massive Stiller fan and um, a British output fan. So yeah, I was glad to see that they got the rights for that.
Now, the house that most of the action is set in is really quite decrepit, and I can't help but notice you've got some flowery wallpaper and you've got some exposed brick in the background there.
I mean, it's
I,
like art imitating life, I can't get away from it.
I've got to ask Barnaby about the house because the story goes is that it's falling apart, and we do sort of see the toilet sort of malfunction. But I gather that happened in reality as well. Is that right?
Oh yes, so yes, when we were shooting that scene,
Right. And if it did, how did everybody cope with it?
well, yeah, what happened was, well, I just asked them to keep shooting, and they started screaming like, "Stop, stop! We're leaking everywhere!" And it all was coming out the background, and we were like, and I was like, keep shooting," and everything was going everywhere, and the set was getting ruined. But it was brilliant. It was a great atmosphere in the studio. Everyone was getting on so well that, yeah, but the set was like, stop. That was like a carry on moment. That was.
Just goes to show that this is not a glamorous life at all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. Hey.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
The set was just so immense and then so immersive when you were in it. It was
Literally.
just every detail was so beautiful. It is part of the character. It is the character. It shows them. It is decrepit and it goes more and more decrepit as they go.